President Xi shows the ability to take such decisions, that we need that shared future which will be good for all.
We're looking at a time of evolution, and we are looking at a time of enormous volatility. The approach of President Xi has been to talk about a shared future, a common shared future of mankind.
You know, I think the one that has struck me the most has been the Belt Road Initiative. This was a major change.
It's a global community of shared future. I think that is one of the biggest, big ideas that has been put forward on a strategic level this century.
We are living at a complicated time. Our world is facing drastic changes and a pandemic, both unseen in a century. Various security challenges keep emerging. The world economy still faces strong headwinds on its path toward recovery, and global development has suffered major setbacks.
Yes, today's world is full of uncertainties. What has happened to the world and how should we respond? The whole world is actually reflecting on this very question, and it has also been very much on President Xi Jinping's mind.
Actually, back in 2013, President Xi gave the answer, and that was to jointly build a community with a shared future for humanity.
这个世界，各国相互联系、相互依存的程度空前的加深，人类生活在同一地球村里。生活在历史和现实交汇的同一时空里，越来越成为你中有我，我中有你的命运共同体。
Throughout the decade, he has highlighted this concept on various occasions. This embodies the idea of building an open and inclusive, clean and beautiful world that enjoys lasting peace, universal security, and common prosperity.
You know, Sylvia, I found it very interesting when we heard Xi Jinping's speech, she mentioned a Chinese idiom, cross a river in the same boat, or set sail together. And I think this is a vivid demonstration of this concept.
Yes, let's hear what our contributors say about this concept.
I'm very pleased that the idea of the shared community for the future is so fundamentally and so strongly expressed by China. The basic message of this idea is that we have to build the future together. President Xi shows the ability to take such decisions, that we need that shared future which will be good for all. We are ready to work for that. And that I think is something very precious at this stage in the international community. We are very happy to see that China has proposed various initiatives for global development, for global security. As president of China, he has to think about the policy making in China itself, but for us, his commitment to shared future, to cooperation for the shared future, that resonates the most.
We're looking at a time of evolution, and we are looking at a time of enormous volatility. The approach of President Xi has been to talk about a shared future, a common shared future of mankind, one which involves inputs from everybody, one which involves a multilateral system as opposed to a unilateral system, with the insistence upon having these kind of more fair and balanced economic and trade relations without mixing political ideology per se, but actually looking at win-win benefits.
The notion of common destiny, as the Chinese saying goes, we're all in the same boat, and if we want to reach the other side of the river, we got to, begin to row together cooperatively in order to do that. This, I think, is the most important element that President Xi has introduced into the global vocabulary, which must become the guiding light for how international politics in relation between nations must conform.
President Xi quoted an ancient Chinese adage, those who only seek comfort for themselves will ultimately be rejected. Those who sacrifice their own interests for the success of others will be supported.
President Xi said that development is the right of all countries, rather than an exclusive privilege of the few.
Building a community with a shared future for humanity is not just a concept. It drives action, resulting in clear and concrete outcomes.
It's a global community of shared future. I think that is one of the biggest big ideas that has been put forward on a strategic level this century. It's not just a concept. I think the global community of shared future is made very concrete by the Belt and Road Initiative. Also, China's approach to climate change. China has set itself some very ambitious goals for 2030, carbon peaking, for 2060, carbon neutrality, and it's working firmly towards these goals. And China's conscious that it needs to do that not just for its own benefit, but for the benefit of the global community.
I was impressed by the idea of improving connectivity in the world by the usual physical means, by air, by sea, and by land. What we have discovered is that China has invested a great deal in many countries in the infrastructure.
I think what China has initiated was something called Globalization 2.0. It had until now, globalization as it was first developed was really the idea that capital can move throughout the world. And it did. But what it did not do, it did not assure development for all the countries that were touched by this capital investment. And a lot of countries, of course, rejected this globalization because they were on the backside of it. They became, to some extent, the victims of it. China, with this idea of win-win cooperation, has introduced a new form of globalization, a globalization which is all-inclusive.
You know, I think the one that has struck me the most has been the Belt Road Initiative. This was a major change, so he really deserves to be commended for this. Although the West sees this as a competition, the developing world is winning. Additionally, I think it's also critical to note that China's unwavering support for the Paris Agreement, China's opposing hegemony and supporting true multilateralism and the reform of multilateral organizations. All of this represents a new era of going global and moving forward, while the West turns increasingly inward and even looks backward. So in short, I think what we can see here throughout the Xi period, we see consistency, we see principles.
He's been approaching this through economic development, through infrastructure, through environmental solutions, working through the United Nations as an overarching vehicle, but also through the Belt and Road policy, which is working with countries that have shared needs and also shared challenges of economic development, where China's experience can be shared and can be borrowed and adapted to local circumstances. It's not just about creating a system which is determined by one set of rules, but one which has rules that are appropriate for each country, each circumstance, each region. But he's looking at how nations and people can work together in a synchronistic and synergistic way.
Through the Belt and Road Initiative, what is China doing? So it's a massive undertaking to benefit the world, to raise people up, for people have the opportunity, have the infrastructure, have the support and the resources they need, provided in cooperation with the government, to be able to improve their lives, just like we saw happen here in China.
What our expert said actually reminded me of a quote by President Xi.
在全球性危机的惊涛骇浪里，各国不是乘坐在190多条小船上，而是乘坐在一条命运与共的大船上。小船经不起风浪，巨舰才能顶住惊涛骇浪。
We all know the expression, a friend in need is a friend indeed. In the face of the huge global challenge posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, different countries have made choices, which is a reflection of different concepts about global governance and varied attitudes towards the well-being of all humanity.
By May last year, China's provided over 2.2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine to over 120 countries and international organizations.
Again, China is doing things to make it happen. Well, let's hear what our experts say about China taking the sense of responsibility in fighting the pandemic.
And the one very important and obvious one has been China's approach to COVID, where China has tried to help other countries, where China has tried to manage it as an issue of global concern. I think it's a vitally important philosophy in terms of the future of humanity. I think the most important thing about it is that President Xi and the Chinese government clearly mean what they say, and they're trying to do things to make it happen.
First, in 2020, China played the decisive role in saving lives and the world economy as it mastered containment and recovery and provided support, especially in critical manufacturing, but also through global vaccine dissemination. Second, by containing the virus at home, China has protected approximately 20% of the world population and essentially prevented new mutations from emerging that could threaten everyone globally. Third, because China has responsibly managed the outbreak, it was not forced to take desperate actions like the US did. And these, included increasing the money supply by 20% and pumping trillions into the domestic economy through irresponsible fiscal policies. And all of these actions by the US, these are what contributed substantially to global inflation. Instead, China's efforts, and especially the recovery efforts, have been much more reasonable and rational and sustainable, with better carryover effects at home and abroad.
The efforts to help other countries during a pandemic across borders are entirely admirable, so that all the countries that received medical help or vaccines from China in that period can definitely be grateful to China for this extended help.
I think we can already see that further opening up is in fact one of the key hallmarks of the Xi era, that this was both the right thing and the right time to do it, and not despite the challenges associated with the pandemic. Can we imagine, for example, if these had not been the core values of Xi Jinping, if really amplifying going out, projects like the Belt Road, seeking win-win solutions, helping others around the world, trying to build a shared future for mankind, if these things hadn't been happening and we had been hit by the pandemic, where would China and the rest of the world be now?
Where would China and the rest of the world be if China had not done what it did?
Why would China do that? I think it shows the traditional Chinese wisdom that has been intrinsic to the nation.
To President Xi, Chinese culture could play a unique and important role, not only in the governance of China, but also in managing relations between different countries.
His respect for the Chinese culture that has been passed down through the ages could be reflected in his global vision. For example, harmony among all nations, and harmony without uniformity.
Or no one should do to others what he does not others to do to himself.
Well, these expressions have also struck a chord with our contributors.
Let's look at the concept harmony without uniformity. This idea has its roots in yin-yang thought, which seeks to understand the unity of opposites and how we can seek harmony through this understanding, combined with Confucian principles of doing things well, particularly in governance, in order to establish a Shaokeng society on the way to Datong. In other words, trying to establish a moderately prosperous or moderately well-off society on the way to great harmony. On the one hand, this kind of thinking promotes Xi Jinping's universal proposition of a shared future for mankind. On the other hand, it rejects the zero-sum logic underpinning Western universalism. Indeed, these remain substantially the key differences between Chinese and Western approaches. China promotes the unity of opposites, peaceful coexistence of differences, while the West contends that contradictions are illogical and must be negated.
I think that the achievement of the current Chinese leadership is this ability to understand that the past leaves great riches, which of course we evaluate we take out of them that which is still useful in modern times. I was struck by his idea about respecting all countries, sovereign countries, great or small, equally.
There is only one Earth and only one shared future for humanity. For this shared future, in President Xi's words, we should endeavor to build a world of universal security free from fear, a world of common prosperity free from poverty, and a world that is open and inclusive, free from isolation, a world that is green, clean, and beautiful. See you next time.
See you next time.